Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Slay to Success talk show. My name is Rochelle, Slay Queen Hemingway, CEO and founder of Slay to Success. I advise and empower women professionals, especially women veterans, to step up into their most authentic personal brand to attract and gain lucrative opportunities. And we are focusing on 4 different areas: appearance, behaviors, communication skills, and digital presence. And here on the show, okay, all you know, we come here on Sunday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I bring in a guest, and the men and women that I'm bringing in, they are living life on their own terms using the slay philosophies. Slay means to kill it, to dominate it, and to nail it, to be on point, to impress greatly, to dream big and work hard until you own it. It is also an acronym that stands for Universal Life and Leadership Philosophies that really resonate with me the most, and hopefully they resonate with you as well. Stay ready to be ready, lead out loud, a sense of community, and knowing you are built to last. So as you come in on the show, we always ask for you to tell us where you're coming in from, right? Tell us what state you're tuning in from, and just give us a shout out, because you could be anywhere else. And I know there is a lot going on these platforms, but you decided to stay with us live. So we want to just make sure that we acknowledge you and we appreciate you for being here. Okay, so tonight, y'all, I have a SLAYMAZING guest. Okay, I have a SLAYMAZING guest, and we met quite a few months ago. I've seen him here, there, and around. I really saw him on LinkedIn, y'all, and then we saw each other in person, and we were like, "Wait a minute." We definitely need to have a conversation here on this show, so that way we can give people hope and inspiration as to what is happening, what is going on, lessons that we have learned over our time. And so after I retired from the military, y'all, I decided to become a professional keynote speaker, a certified image consultant, personal brand expert, an author of 4 books, one which is an anthology that I contributed to, and a proud United States Air Force veteran of 30 years. And so many of my guests have also had an extensive background as well, and I just like to share them. Okay, so who do we have tonight, y'all? Well, I have my great friend, brother in arms, if you will, Bill Pratt, who is the president of Bilden Enterprises Incorporated. Now, he's a former director, enterprise technology governance at U.S. Department of Homeland Security. All right, so this was his former job. Now he is a trusted advisor to government information technology executives, aligning technology strategy with mission success. With over 40 years, y'all, of leadership in both the private sector and federal government, including DHS and the Department of Defense, he has driven enterprise-wide transformation, change management, and IT modernization. Bill has supported DHS since its inception, including roles at Immigration and Naturalization Service, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and Headquarters Chief Information Officer offices. As Director of Enterprise Technology Governance, Bill led key initiatives in agile development ops and program health adoption while founding the agency's first emergency technology branch. His expertise spans IT acquisition, systems engineering, infrastructure, and procurement, making him a strategic force in government IT innovation. So, with all that being said, please give a warm welcome to my friend, Bill.
Hey, Rochelle. How's it going? Thanks so
It
much
is
for having
going
me on.
well. Yes,
Who
I'm
is
so
that guy?
happy. Do it now?
I said, who is that guy you were talking about?
I don't know. I mean, you're gonna have to tell me, because I mean, I would not say it's a lot. It's the depth. All right. It's the depth of what you have done throughout your entire life and kind of where you're at today. And I knew, like, based on your personality, our interaction that we had, I was like, man, he is got to be on this show. Let's
Thank
out. Tonight is a night where we get to talk a little bit about who you are and kind of what you have done and what has led you here today. So please give the audience a little bit mini introduction about Bill.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Rochelle. So nice to be here. And hi, everybody. We've been chatting a lot on LinkedIn, no doubt. If you're a LinkedIn member, it's nice to see you in person, at least over the video here. Um,
Absolutely.
so I've been like as the bio says, way too many syllables and way too many big words there. But 40 years of doing this since '83. I hit town in 1983 after the Navy. So I did 6 years in the Navy. I was on a carrier. I was on the USS Nimitz, floating around the Mediterranean, and we get so many. I've been so privileged to have so many interesting things happen to me in my life, and with the slave principle, making them happen, but also standing on the shoulders of so many people to help me make them happen, right?
Yeah.
And so we want to pass that on too. We'll talk about all that stuff, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But part of it was 6 years in the Navy, and after working, and we can go back to the early years too, because you're working hard so since day one. But I came down here, and I still live in Waldorf, Maryland. So in the Cheltenham, Maryland area, right kind of next to Clinton, there was a naval base, which is currently currently a FLETC base, right? It's a training center, federal law enforcement training center, and it formerly was a Navy base. So I worked there when I first got out of the Navy, and I was there for 13 years. We built
Wow.
telecom systems for all the shipboard systems. So that led to like an IT career. Learned a lot of, of course, a lot of great leadership in the Navy, and then was able to build on that and become, a supervisor and division head and things like that in that role. And then, during the crazy late 90s, when we had the telecom boom, so I went to AT&T and MCI for a couple of years. Then we had Y2K, and I got picked up at Freddie Mac, and I was at Freddie Mac for 4 years, preparing for Y2K, getting through that event, and very successfully. And then they kept me around for another couple of years because they liked me, and I just did a couple more things. And then 9/11 hit, and you can hear this of almost anybody who's ever been in Homeland Security. 9/11 was one of the things that may have kicked it off. So I did leave Freddie Mac, and I went to because frankly, because Freddie Mac lost so much money in the post 9/11 era, that we took a big economic hit in the country. And not everybody may have been there at the time, but so as a consultant, they said, "Well, it's got to see you later, brother. We're gonna see what our own folks can do." And then, but then 5 months later, I got picked up at INS, which was starting to build the first CVIS system, and that's the Student and Visitor Exchange System. And so that is a system in effect to this day, and it makes sure that one of the big uses for it is to make sure all the folks who are over here on student visas and also visitor exchanges for work, that they're tracked in all the other systems that DHS has control over. And so that led to, as we talked about starting at INS, when DHS was stood up, I stayed at ICE when a lot of my friends who formerly were INSers became USCIS and OBIM. And so they kind of spread out across DHS. And then in 2013, I came to headquarters, and it took a leadership role in the governance and compliance space, and did that until I retired last January.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's an extensive journey that you had from one organization. I heard a little small stints until longer stints, and I think that is important for people to understand is sometimes we think and believe like these long careers, I had the 30 years of its service, but there is always the long service that is broken up into, smaller time periods. But,
Right.
having this knowledge and this experience, especially in today's world, like IT, you can't do anything
Mm.
without IT. I mean, I know we're on this StreamYard platform because someone developed this software for this, but we're talking like mega, like mega, what do you call those um what do you call those, like not even like organizations, but like where all the information is fed in,
For
you
sure, the
know.
networks and things like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So, you talked a little bit about the 6 years that you were in the Navy.
Hmm.
So where exactly did you grow up in? And what are some of the lessons that you learned prior to you going into the military that was helpful
Hmm.
while you were there in the military?
Well, it was again. So the Chinese say, "May you live in interesting times." And my sisters and I talk about this a lot because they came up with me. We had a very interesting life, and there's a book in there. They tell me, so
Oh,
one of us has to write it. My sister might end up writing it, but
yeah.
I actually am from inner city Cleveland. I was a little projects kid back in the day. My dad worked in a steel mill, as so many other men in that area from Cleveland. And it was a wonderful mix of people. Because I talk about that the music was amazing. I mean, all the Latin kids came up from Puerto Rico and their dads to work in the steel mills, right? My dad was, white guy, Polish. Was working in the steel mills. My granddaddy was Syrian, though. He came over on the boat from Syria, believe it or not, back in
Wow.
1917. So then he met my dad at work, and then my mom ended up marrying my dad. But the black kids, their dads came down from Flint and Detroit to work in the steel mills, and all the country kids have come up from West Virginia. They came up, and it was an amazing neighborhood that was so rich, and then you talk about all the different religions as well, right? There was
Hmm.
Jewish kids there. Obviously, my granddad was Druze of all things, Druze. What I always thought it was a druid. I always thought he was wearing a little cape, dancing
Yeah.
around Stonehenge or something when I was a little kid, right? So it
Oh,
was very interesting. So the thing I took from then was we always said happy holidays from day one, because you
yeah.
didn't know if someone was Christian, you didn't know if someone was Muslim, you didn't know if someone was Jewish. The kid across the street, it was all that was not an uncommon thing to us, right? We were all used to I mean, and from day one, diversity from day one, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it was just our life. And I so that gave me maybe, if I had to like put all the benefits I've had in my life, that right there, that upbringing with all those different sorts of people and knowing and liking them and not knowing any different, right? I mean,
Hmm.
racism was racism, right? But
Yeah.
but it was, as kids, we were all like, yeah, we got this. And that true comfort with everybody has benefited me till 10 minutes ago, right? I mean,
Yeah.
my entire life. You can tell when people are faking it. We all know that, right? You can tell when people are comfortable. You can tell if they're just in a room and kind of a little
Mhm.
standoffish, but there's vibes you put out, right?
Yeah.
And so that, and my sisters, and my whole family is very the same way. We are so fortunate, and we talk about it all the time. We all like to be little mini hack psychologists about the human condition, but that helped quite a lot. And so then some tragedy happened. My father passed in when I was 10. And
Oh,
so my
I'm
mom,
sorry.
as a single woman, she was working hard. She was scrubbing walls and stuff. This is the American story, right? And it's rags to riches. It's the way it's supposed to work. The opportunity is
Mhm.
there to get it. But a lot of people really looked out for me. The neighborhood organizations that come in and have the kids where, I went out and visited some folks out in the country, a thing called Friendly Town. And that
Mhm.
gave me a whole nother view into like country folks. I was like, wow, I was flashing myself like a little mini Jimi Hendrix. I used to wear these crazy, my mom would let me wear all this crazy Jimi Hendrix clothes. I was like 10.
Oh, okay.
Oh man, I was a mess. And I ain't got it now because I used it all up. I had this little white Jew fro. I had this curly hair. It
Right.
was, it was, it was legendary. That's how people used to remember me, as my hair. They could see me 2 blocks away and who I was. Now they
Right.
see me 2 blocks. It's the sheen that they recognize. But, but we worked through that. And so, a couple years later, I ended up actually had to go to work at 14. I still went to school. I didn't drop out of high school, but that did kind of messed up my college prep work because I
Yeah.
was literally getting off. school going. I worked at the A&P, ended up being a dairy manager at the A&P. It's an old supermarket. It
Mm-hmm.
became bought by Giant, I think, in some acquisition. But that's I did that, and then but I was the second oldest. My older sister lived in the city, and we actually moved out to a farmhouse, which was we had no business going to a farmhouse. This widow and like 7 kids, and she went out to the middle of the country. Our next door neighbor was an Amish guy. I mean,
Oh,
we were on a farm, and
oh,
talking about taking all these little. I never saw grass. We talking to all these little concrete project kids and trying to pick peas and stuff. It was a transition, but
yeah.
but very helpful because it gave you a whole nother side of life to see.
Yeah.
And then finally, so I did work, but then roundabout, my mom did this. She goes, "Look, you're too big for this town. I don't want you being like this." And nothing wrong with being a dairy manager at a supermarket. And they were to say, "Yeah, might do more, be a manager or something one of these days, but just you need to get out of here, man." So
Yeah.
she it was her that gave me that spark, and I went into the Navy. So and so within just a couple of years, I'd seen every Disneyland. Well, they didn't build Europe and Japan yet, but saw all the Disneylands, saw all the Sea Worlds. I went to boot camp in Orlando and San Diego for some training for a year and a half, and then out to the USS Nimitz in the Med. And I was privileged to see a ton of Europe, a ton of Northern Africa, the Middle East, and just very, very, very fortunate. And
Yeah.
and then then I got out and went back to work for the Navy anyway. I basically did my 20 because I did 6 in, bummed around for a year, decompressed for a while, then took another job about a year later, then did 13 more.
Yeah.
So,
I appreciate you sharing the story, but because I think it's important that, my guests share their background, because a lot of times we just see the titles, the positions, and we don't really understand what has happened, prior, what has led, and the swag. Okay. Because that's what I call it, the swag that you have. It's how you can create this, connections with people, like the interpersonal connections, which is so needed nowadays, and
right.
understanding people's backgrounds, kind of where they're at, and meeting them where they're at. And I found that when I was still serving, that a lot of people were missing the mark there.
Mhm.
They didn't really want to hear the backstory. They just wanted people just to get to work, you
Mhm.
know, and
Mhm.
it really didn't give that sense of belonging, care, the nurturing effect that can happen through that. And when you do have a upbringing where you were exposed to a lot of different people with different perspectives, there's a difference. And like we said, when you said, people, you can see when they're faking it, you just can't get that, you know what I mean, just from just starting out. Sometimes it has to
Right.
be developed over some time. So your leadership has really carried you, like, from your childhood, and even when you started, and then in the mix you started to get roles as a supervisor.
Mhm.
So, did you see the difference between, when you were in the military, and then when you went into, like, the corporate space? I mean, you were still working for the Navy, if you will, but it was kind of maybe a little bit different. Do you know in which ways, or did you see some different ways that people were leading?
Well, I think, thanks. I mean, the command and control, we both military folks. And so I grew up on that. And actually, when I took that training in the Navy, they had this advanced technical field program in the Navy. So they said, if you go out and take it, if you had to sign up for 6, right? So they
Yeah.
got me in a moment a week. They said, "Oh man, we'll send you to Orlando instead of Great Lakes up in Detroit, or up in, up there where it's cold," because I'm a Cleveland kid. And
Hmm.
I enlisted in December. They said, "Oh yeah, we'll send you down to Orlando, but you got to give us 2 more years." And I'm like, "Sign me up." I'm such a fool. It was the recruiter and the next cube over. He's like, "Yo, man, see if the dude will go to Orlando." But I was super lucky because number one, I got to go to Orlando and San Diego, which were both just beautiful. But also, it was a radium, and now this rate doesn't exist anymore. It started out with radio signals. It started out with me listening for open high frequency signals, because this even predated satellites. I mean, I
Mm.
want to talk about this a little bit too. If you talk about being an IT person, think about all the retraining I've had to do myself on purpose to stay up, right? But
Yeah.
this is where I started, and it was wonderful. But because I did what they did when you took that year and a half of training, they put you in the advanced technical field. One of the benefits of that is they immediately gave you E3 right in boot camp. So I
Yeah.
started out 3 levels among, up. And then as soon as you graduated, they gave you E4, which is a petty officer third class. And I can't remember my tables for the other respective, but a small, I guess a corporal, a sergeant, whatever it is. But
Mhm.
I was required in school to lead. And
Yeah.
I would talk about being thrown into the frying pan. I was like little 18-year-old punk. And I'm literally, I'm out there trying to get working parties going with all these other dudes that were been on ships in their 20s, maybe long,
Mhm.
and they're like these salty old sailors, and I'm up there trying to be like by the book day one. I would look like what's the dude? I look like Kevin Bacon in Animal House. Like
Right.
oh, you know, and I was just about that green, right? And but that's hard, but you got to jump into it and get on top of it. And
Yeah.
not that I believe me, it was it was not any kind of brave. I was just, but I was, when I was because of my previous upbringing, though. Yeah, I'm gonna get it done. I'm gonna do
Yeah.
the job. I'm not gonna just gonna what not gonna say I can't, whatever. I'm gonna get in there and do it. And but that gave me an early, really an early step up in leading, right? And the Navy teaches you leadership. I mean,
Yeah.
well, all military, right? Of
Yeah.
course. But part of the training I did take as I went through A school and then C school is leadership training to prepare me. And so so now I got book learning, right? And now
Yeah.
then you have to go out there and actually make it work. But that's a
Absolutely.
challenge. And I sort of use some of those lessons to this day. So here's this, think about this 18-year-old kid. I got the stripe and I got the book telling me theoretically what I should do. But then I got a bunch of salty old sailors. At the time, they were all guys too, but they didn't. I mean, they had women in, but we were segregated at the time.
Mhm.
And this is the late 70s. And so I had to figure out, how do I get these guys at the time to do what I need them to do? And I can't just opine, so I can't just like order them around. They would have laughed at me, right? So I
Yeah.
had to like work it. And everybody but even today, as a modern, and now I'm in my 60s, right? Many and all the way through, and I'm going to be leading pretty much in a leadership role most of the way through. But you got everybody, and PM experts will tell you, each person is motivated in a different way, right? But you have
Absolutely.
to have, it takes a like a little bit of an absence of, not, I got an ego, believe me, but you have to put your ego down to see what does Bob need and what does Sally need, what's Jennifer need, what's Terrence need, for the way they've been brought up and the
Yeah.
filters they view the world through, right? And to make them feel respected and seen and heard, but still get the work that you need out of them, right? And
Yeah.
so I think I may have learned some of that early stuff back then, but I think treating folks with respect and just trying to help them get there without doing it for them, which was,
Yep.
believe me, command and control. That was a hard thing for me to transition off
It's a
of.
hard thing.
'Cause look, I tell you once, you don't do it. I'll tell you twice, I don't do it. I'm like, but the captain ain't calling you if it doesn't get done. So I'm
That's
going to
right.
go out and do it the third time.
Yep.
And I had to. I'd love to hear some experts' thoughts on that, because I've had leaders even in the last 4 or 5 years where there was a considerable difference in that. When I was at Homeland Security headquarters, I worked for the CTO directly, and the CIO was above him. And I'd had folks, and I really didn't have any junior folks by that time. Everybody's a 13 or a 14 or 15. If they lived in Kansas, they'd be running half the state, right? But here in
Hmm.
DC, there's quite a few of those folks at that level. And my boss would be, one of my bosses, he just let him fail. So we're on the phone with the deputy CIO, who was a very aggressive, very demanding person, but very fair. But they're like, and they're stumbling, and I want to reach in and my boss like, no, let him go, let him go. I'm like, it was killing me, but so that, when to know to let go of the tricycle, let your kid go on and ride it. That
Yep.
was always a challenge for me. I have many leadership challenges, but that was one of the ones that stuck with me to this day, because I still, at the end of the day, want to get it done
Yeah.
and meet the mission. By
That's one of the, yeah, you're absolutely right, because it was one of my challenges too. And as I was a late bloomer as well, going through my different responsibilities, and I would just try to do all the things, right? I'm like, listen, like, it got to get done, and at the nth hour, I'm making things happen, making the magic happen. But then I realized that they're not growing, right? They're not learning. I'm not building trust. I'm not, allowing them to have the autonomy and, the flexibility to just get it done the way they can get it done. So that's when I started to learn, and believe me, it was like 20 years in until I figured out, like, this needs to happen. I ain't going to run myself ragged and burn myself out if I do not incorporate some of these principles, or, kind of, philosophies, if you will, to allow them to achieve the goal. So I think any leader, especially at the helm, has some challenges with this. Right. And people, like you said, they have so many different motives, agendas, what they like and what they don't like. And trying to figure all that out is very complex. But, for me, and definitely for yourself, it's like when we have the leadership role, like, we gonna lead out loud. We're gonna have a hands on the wheel, and we driving the bus. It might be the crazy bus, but we driving this bus, right? And so you were able to, like, find the ways to lead and to be successful. And then when I heard you went to DHS, I was like, oh Lord, like, I already know. So I have a medical background, of course, long time in that space. Um, and I know, like, the changeover and so forth. So that was towards the end, right? Towards the end of your tenure, if you
Pretty
will.
much. I mean, well, yeah, for Homeland Security was like from '02 until 24, right? So about the second half of my career, if you split it up.
Yeah. So, at that point, there was probably a lot of changes that came over time,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you're still working, these challenges. And so, looking back at that, is there anything that you would offer, and especially for our mindset? Because I think that's one of the things that we don't speak enough about, is the way that we see, process, feel, maybe our emotions about things get the best of us. So, what did you discover about your mindset over the years?
Well, you talked about the crazy bus and things. I mean, I'm of the, and I try not to drive it, but I would rather drive it 20 miles than ride it 5 miles in the wrong direction, right? So
Mm.
I will go up and, you know, tap the shoulder of the driver and say, not for nothing, but, so sometimes that challenged me. And one of the things too, because I was very top down, and command and control, I was like, and I'm, pretty clever. I'm pretty quick, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's smart, but I often find that I saw things and I knew what we were going to get to. I knew what we needed to do. One of my big challenges, big challenge, is letting the other person get there, right? And at the end, because we all think in different ways, right?
Mhm.
We all have, we all, there's so many different types of intelligence, and some people just want to walk through it and talk through it, and then, oh man, yeah, I got you. And and that was, oh man, it's almost like watching paint dry. And I'm not just like, well, look, let me go out and get a burger. I'll be back. Well,
Right.
but you have to help them get there. But that's been a big challenge. But but really the one thing that I would tell everybody, and I learned, well, I figured this out myself a long time ago too, is like, number one, they have this, what are they called? Imposter syndrome, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's what, and even President Obama said that. He said a couple things that I loved because I found them to be so true. One is, it said, when you get at the table, you realize these guys ain't all that. These folks ain't, you got every right to be there, because when you get there, you realize, holy crap, they need you there. And the other thing that I love that he said, and I used it a million times, is we are the change we've been waiting for, right? So
Yes.
there's two kinds of folks I've found, right? And they're both, you got to have them both. But there are managers who will take, like, they're implemented. They'll take, if you have a process, you build a process, they will take that process and run it to the nth degree, and they will nail it. But somebody's got to build that process. And so you got creators and you got folks who kind of implement their creation, right? But the
Mm-hmm.
challenge is, what if you don't have it, right? And so many places I've been, um, they didn't have it, right? We went there, we started doing Y2K testing. This one of my, I really, is a highlight on my resume, is that I wrote the step-by-step process for converting to Y2K when I was at Freddie Mac, because they're like, okay,
Mm.
here we are, what do we do, right? So started a couple years out and met with every business owner and every system owner, and we set up the schedule and got them through and tested. And oh, by the way, for those young folks out there, we did find a bunch of stuff. Just because we planned for it and we're successful did not mean it's a hoax, because a lot of people, oh, that was a hoax, nothing happened. Well, yeah, right, because we actually, for one time in human history, we actually planned for something and mitigated it in advance of it being a mess.
A mess.
Anyway, but that was but there was no plan. You had to go in there and make it happen. And then coming to DHS, Homeland Security, that was the same thing. Now, when I was at MCI and AT&T, they had I pretty much was just running some testing for them. So those are pretty regular stuff. But at Homeland, right, you had all these ex-agencies, and they were like, they all did different things. Man, that was that was like the Brady Bunch on steroids, when you had all these different agencies coming in. They all hated one another to get started.
Yeah.
Many of them, like the former customs, whatever CBP was back then, and the former ICE, that those guys came together under ICE. Whoo, I was at a leadership conference in Dallas, and me and some other dude from headquarters, we had to like hold them at bay from one another, right? And
What?
so, I mean, not like literal fistfights, but they were arguing like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And so, bringing everybody together, and that had to be created. I think there were challenges there, but also great opportunities, because everybody knew DHS was new, and we had to pull it together. And this is from like '02 to, to today. But that's still a pretty young agency. That,
Yeah.
CFPB, RIP, and other agencies are younger, but DHS was the biggest, right, of the biggest I think a non DoD agency, but cobbled together by all this stuff. But it also gave us permission to go break some things and do some things differently. I don't think we're
Right.
there yet. I mean, it's a continual thing, but because we're never funded right. We could talk about that and what we've been seeing the last couple of weeks, if you feel like it. But
Yeah. Let's do that.
but we got some things done, because it was, churning waters where the fastest water moves, right? And you
Yeah.
get to other agencies that have been around for a long, long time, and they didn't have that impetus to kind of, to mix things up and change things. And I know that I've gone to I won't mention them by name, but I've been talking with chief information officers over the last year at a couple of other agencies who don't even have like agile IT development done yet, because they're getting so much pushback. And I'm like, dude, I worked with that agency, or my peer in that agency, back in 2015. And I'm like, that is like, you guys were doing okay there, but they ran into a brick and they
Mm-hmm.
couldn't get it forward. And, and I think the ultimate thing is, now we got some people in there with a wrecking ball. They're going to probably try to push these guys, or probably tear it all down and then build it back up. That's what it seems like it's going to be. But but I had that benefit at DHS, because we did create a bunch of stuff. We We did agile IT development there, which was, we got that done. It was started in about 14. In 2017, all of our major acquisitions were doing agile. We mandated it. And the big part there is we really needed top cover. So the undersecretary for management, the way Homeland Security is structured, there's an undersecretary for management is underneath the secretary, and he runs all the CXOs, like the CIO, the CFO, the chief procurement officer, and many others. And so he really wanted it. And then staff level, I was the guy, and formerly my buddy Daryl Peak. A lot of you folks know Daryl on LinkedIn and elsewhere. So we kicked off a thing called the Agile Acquisition Working Group. And the CTO at the time, he and I went to every other CXO in the entire place and sold what we wanted to do, got them to write their signatures on a white paper and say, yes, we're going to do this, and give me some people from their staffs to work with. And it was the first time any of the staffs continually worked together on one thing ever, right?
Wow.
And then when I left in January 25, or 24, I think it's still going on, but we still met monthly. So the procurement, all those folks, but again, you can, breaking down silos was huge, right? But we had to break it all down, and we build it back up in a collaborative manner. And I think a lot of other agencies just haven't done that. And I think there's pockets of excellence, but you have to do it. You have to do it holistically.
Yeah.
And so, I think for the folks who support the federal, even now, like, all bets are off. I don't know what's going to be left in, a couple of weeks or a couple of months. Keep my eye, my ear on the walls and and talk with some of our friends to see what they're still doing. But I do think the folks in industry, look, the work has to get done. Mm-hmm. And if they're not going to have the feds do it, I can tell you, I never, ever in my entire federal career had the budget I needed to do the staffing I needed, right? You have to go build a budget, defend a budget. You may get it, you may not. It goes up to Congress, comes back, whatever you get, you split up, and then away you go. And then, OPM, I know they're getting a lot of extra attention these days. But even I was fighting them when I was in, because it was so hard to get new federal employees. It was just too hard to hire folks. And so I never, even though I wasn't staffed at the level, even though I wasn't even staffed where I wanted to be, I never had a full staff, even of my allocated folks, because it would take 9 months to a year to get a new Fed in, which is like ludicrous if you can just think about that. Yeah. So anyway, but we were able to get a lot of stuff done there, but we had to do it, to go back to that. We are the change we've been waiting for, because you just got to jump in and get started and get it done. Hopefully grab the senior leadership top cover, and you can't wait for somebody to do it for you, or it'll never happen.
Right. I mean, you said a lot in that to give us a better understanding, because, right now people are, there's a lot of heaviness, and especially in the government space. As we're talking, you're even looking to start your business, start your in that space, mm-hmm. So, as a new entrepreneur, if you will, all right, going into this space and knowing that there are others that are perhaps dealing with some either losses or some significant challenges, where do you think you see us? And I'll say us as from an entrepreneurial, who is perhaps connected to these jobs that the government has. What is your take right now?
Well, I think this is something we'll have to learn. So conceptually, you need to learn what their pain points are, right? What is it they're trying to get done? And I'll spend a couple moments talking about, like, when you do get a meeting with the government, but you really have to ask them, right? Well, some of the worst things ever, and it happens to this day. And I've been briefed. And when I was a Fed and I was a director there at headquarters, folks would come in and want to brief me on their solutions, and I would take those meetings. I was unique in that. I know a lot of people didn't want to do them, and they would, like, I'd say I'll talk to them, But a lot of times they would come in and they would waste, you only get 30 minutes, and they'd waste the first 15 minutes telling me about their company history and all the people they support. And, in 2017, we started the company, and and this is the owner. But, it's all about how are you going to help me meet
Yeah.
the mission, right? And so, and I met with a very nice lady for coffee in Chinatown a couple of years ago when my office was there. And I said, of course, I'll, meet with you after. And we went to a local pizza place and sat down and chatted. And she went and she talked for like 20 minutes and just kept going on and on. And I said, okay, so let me ask you a question. What do you think you should have asked me? Okay. Like, what are you wanting? Right. Because she went into, and it's, again, it happens all over the place. They want to talk, here's what we do. Here's what we've built. Here's the tool we've got. And it does this, and it does this, and it does this, and it does this. And never once asked me what I was interested in, or if there's any pain points I was feeling, or what in the services, and how are you liking the services you got? Is there anything we can do? And so they wasted 15 to 20 minutes on a direction. Remember, I talked about driving 20 minutes down the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
so, and I really, one of my mom beat it into me. I do not like interrupting people when they're talking. But that's why my internal voices have, pop in a, transmission, because I'm like, please stop so I can, tell you what. And so, but then, so that's wasted time though, right? Because
Yeah.
no, I'm good on that, but I really need this. And that's something else they do. Well, they just wasted 20 minutes that they couldn't explain to me in more detail how they could help me with this one thing. So the one thing couple things, right? So, as an old guy doing IT, right, I've had to literally retrain myself over and over and over and over. And I did I'm privileged to do it. The first emerging technology branch at headquarters was underneath my division. Of course, I assigned a really smart person to do that, and
Right.
and had a great team doing it. But you can't manage it if you can't speak the language, at least, right? I'm not going to go write any AI code. Believe me, there's so many smart people, but I understood what it was, and as it was coming up, and I did governance and compliance, and a lot of it was still done manually. Even to this day, I saw that I wanted it to be more automated. And so and there was a lot of things I wanted it to do in advance of the technology even being there. And now that
Yeah.
the technology is there, now I'm, getting it lined up and talking to a bunch of AI folks. So continually educate yourself, read the press. I'm on those. You could do nothing but read these like industry papers every single day in IT. So I
Mm-hmm.
do skim them. Tons of stuff kind of in my inbox, right? But a lot of them are very important. I would hit the conferences, right? And here's a tip for the feds. Even if you're not there anymore, even if you've been sort of asked to exit, believe me, the conference folks are not going to be checking your email. They're not going to be, so sign up for something. If you sign up with a .gov or a whatever what we use for, I guess, when we use edu, you're likely going to get free entrance there. Go in there, learn, talk to folks, and really, it's getting your fellow networking folks. I know the IT group, right? IT business development, IT technical folks. It's a great group of folks, and I've got these relationships that we built over several years. When I exited and retired last January, I had so many people helping me. I had former generals, former CIOs, several former CIOs helping me determine what I should do next. I had a bunch of business development people telling me what to ask for, what to look out for, what I should do, what I shouldn't do. And at the end of the day, I took all that info and really came away and got a wonderful opportunity. The great company called the Rely Group Inc. They're out of Baltimore. They support CMS, HHS, and they also support a TSA, and asked me to come aboard and help them strengthen their relationship on the Washington Beltway, because I knew everybody down here and they're like a Baltimore firm, but also to look for other opportunities at DHS. And so that was an awesome, I'm not with them anymore, but it was an awesome company and a really great year. And you'll find this too, right? We talked about this, Rochelle, you talked about this a little bit earlier. You don't go to a company and work for 30, 40 years and get to go watch and roll out.
Yeah.
You go where you're needed and where the business calls, needs you, and then you'll likely move on. So I think that younger kids coming in now expect that and don't
Yeah.
expect those long-term things. But I
Yep.
think those of us who've been in the military and been in the, in the government, that's probably a mind shift we have to undertake. And then I think the other thing is just, just you're the sum total of all your experiences, right? And although
Mhm.
you're doing one particular thing in the government right now and you're doing it well, and I know these folks are doing so well and doing their jobs so well and doing it without any kind of resources. I know that the government is often run on the cheap. As I mentioned, I never did have a full staff, even the small staff I was authorized.
Mhm.
So I know what folks have been doing out there, but that stuff transfers. So I would
Mm.
ask you to and take a look at my LinkedIn thread, find me, say hello. I'm forwarding a number of things that my buddy David Valencia, he's at the TSA right now.
Yes,
He's built-
David.
David's built a bunch of really great tools to help folks transition. And for one thing, get your resume out of the that 20-page USA Jobs format, which mine was, as long as I've been around, it was like, I had it back to my kindergarten and it was just so long.
I
So
know.
there's a tool to convert that, right? And it's different. So scientists, you just have to sort of understand what the industry wants now, but there's a bunch of folks out there, a bunch of folks on LinkedIn trying to help folks transition. And keep in mind that your job, although you did it amazingly, is not the limit of what you do. To kind of
Mm.
expand out from what you actually did and go to some of the more conceptual um, techniques you use to do that job,
Yep.
and then put that on your resume and put that on folks you talk to. And don't be afraid to promote yourself, right? We're here to slay.
Yeah.
And you can't be too demure. You shouldn't be a braggart, right? But you got to tell your story and say what you're good at.
Absolutely. I think those are all gems like that I even need for my own self, right?
Me too. I need my
I
own.
know. But we do had to, and I didn't acknowledge, Chevy was here and she's still probably here. I know her, and Sunday nights are crazy because she's getting her kids ready for the week and so forth. And then of course Donnell is here.
Hey,
He says it's a master class, and I'm like, yes, this is. This is a lot of the things again that you've experienced and know, and being able to share and help with people who need it right now. Like seriously, like reposting, getting your name out there, like connect to individuals like Bill, Donnell, Chevy, myself. We're in this space right now where we know that we have somewhat of influence. I'm not saying we got like heavy influence, but we have the network. We're all part of the
mhm,
same networks. And who knows what will come of it, right? If you put
right,
yourself out there. And I think that's one of the other things is people are so afraid to market themselves because they don't
right,
want to seem like, they're just desperate or, and we don't see it as that at all because LinkedIn is for networking.
right,
Um, so, and sometimes it's not about what you really know, it's about who you know in some
right.
cases, right? So having that. And so you're talking about you're entering the entrepreneurial space, right? And so, why are you becoming an entrepreneur is one of my questions. And I think the audience would appreciate your answer to this too. So,
Okay.
what made you
Well,
decide?
thanks. Yeah, thanks, and thanks, Chevy and Donnell. Nice to see you. Thanks for joining us tonight. Thanks for shouting. So I didn't know really what was next. So when I did come out, I'd been a Govy for a long time. I I was getting ready, frankly, to be an entrepreneur and a consultant at the time. And I actually had one of my friends in the industry who's got his own consulting firm. He was marketing me and some of my concepts. I did governance compliance for a long time, a lot of it came out of this noggin, right, and aligned with some other things, but with a bunch of great people. Nobody does anything by themselves. but a lot of the concepts did. And they actually threw it on a coffee cup for me when I left Homeland Security, right? So um, conceptually, I think, I'd mentioned some of the other agencies I've been to who have not had the success DHS has had, right? So I literally was thinking about taking that on the road, and this guy was marketing that to some CIOs and some of the other agencies, and getting some. Yeah, they're like, get this guy over here. We'd like to hear about this. And so, but then Rely Group came through with this amazing opportunity for me, and that was a full-time job.
Yeah.
And really that made me, because at the time, and we talk about butterflies, I was like, oh man, do I really want to do bookkeeping? I'm gonna have to figure out this, I'm gonna have to figure out that. And this wonderful opportunity came out. And so I ended up taking that. It really was a marriage made in heaven. What they were looking for, where I was in my career, it just was a perfect fit. And so, and so I spent a lot of time. You guys have seen it way too much of me on LinkedIn over the last year, but every time you saw me, you saw Rely Group Inc. right underneath my name. And so a little bit of brand ambassadorship was part of that job. A little bit, literally introducing them to DHS and to industry for teaming partners, the folks who don't do business development. Almost none of these companies are big enough to do these jobs themselves when contracts come out. So you have to team up. And that's that in and of itself, knowing all these folks over all these years and getting and frankly, not screwing people over, some folks get disappointed, but treating everybody right. Treating everybody fairly, treating everybody with respect, and honestly, really, really meaning it, right, has all come back to me just in 10x as people have reached out. And actually, a lot of folks I've met and just had conversations with reached out and wanted to give me business or pull me on teams just based on our former relationship. So keep that in mind.
Yeah.
But anyway, I did this job, and then we, a little technical direction. So I'm like, yo, you need, anyway, I'll tell you, this is a freebie for everybody. If you're trying to sell something to DHS, you better bring AI, because that was what we were
bring AI, y'all. Did you hear that?
So AI every day, all day, right?
All day.
realistic, useful use cases for it. But then, and so, so that gave me a really wonderful year of comfort to transition, right? Many of you are not going to get that, or you folks are listening right now. So as an entrepreneur, so then the next thing is, with that having ended, did I just want to go into another job? And not that I may have, right? I mean, right now I'm meeting with folks this week, next week, and the week following. But I'm also having my lawyer draw up an LLC, actually two. So in Rochelle's kind introduction to me, she mentioned Bilden Enterprises. Bill and Denise, my wife, we formed that years and years ago. And at the time it was, I do auto racing as a hobby, right? I'm an announcer, podcaster, big website and stuff like that. So I was this covered that, but I said, one of these days, when I do break into consulting, I'll pull the IT underneath it, right? And so that's what Bilden Enterprises is. It's been around. We've had it since the 2000s, and if not earlier. I do got some years on me.
Yeah.
So, but then talking to my lawyer this last week, he's like, yeah, not so much. He says, let's separate the auto racing from the, because I'm going to start. I mean, I'm talking to folks about contracts, so it'll be real money, not messing around money, right?
Right.
And then so we'll separate those out. So the new thing, I won't mess with the drag racing piece of it, but the new company, which is shown on my name here, is Gov IT Works. And believe it or not, that was available. I'm like, let's grab it. And so I did that. And I tried to get that website. They didn't have it, but they had govitwork.com. So that's going to be weird, but I grabbed that too.
Yeah.
So I've made a LinkedIn page, and it exists. But I haven't. I have the LLC is supposed to drop. It was supposed to be Friday, so probably Monday or Tuesday. When it finally drops, I'll convert my LinkedIn everything to that. But that's going to be a place. All these folks I've talked about the cool things that they're doing to help folks transition, like David Valencia and others. They've authorized me to take all that stuff and put it right there. So it's one place you can go find it. And that'll be up on GovIT Works. And then what I really wanted to do is help. I have this, didn't write the AI, but got the use cases right.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was in the government, I had a bunch of use cases that I wanted to automate the governance compliance process. That's still up there in my head. The process is as it is, but automating it, I think there's tons of opportunities there. And then when I came onto the business development side this last year, I was seeing folks do stuff manually that I'm like, y'all are crazy. I'm not trying to work that hard. People like copying and pasting RFPs into spreadsheets and stuff like that.
Oh,
Capability matrices and stuff. I'm like, nope. So I started reaching out to a number of companies who actually do that. And there's some amazing ones out there who do parts of what my imagination told me I wanted a BD system to do. So I'm working with a number of those. And there's nothing signed or no contracts or anything in place. But I do want to find the best of breed companies that help government and the best of breed companies that help business development. Selling to the government, and then put those all under GovIT Works LLC. So the one thing I kind of want to have a little catalog, kind of like an app store. Hey, if you need to do this, here's what my 40 years of experience, I recommend this, and here's why. Right? It might be 2 or 3 things in each category, and there might be different things in different price ranges, right? Because some of these things are quite pricey.
Yeah.
But I think there's some of the tools out there that are pretty expensive, but they're less expensive than hiring a person. And I think that, not that we want to take work away from folks, but I'm very excited about that's where I want to help. And then there's also things where I have, expertise from the government where folks can, and I'm talking with a number of companies right now about working on opportunities with them without them having to spend a whole salary on someone. They can actually bring me in and work on a little bit of stuff together. So I think there's enough there to cobble together. And also I'm so privileged and lucky at this time that I'm retired, right? I'm a retired guy, so I got a little thing over. I got TSP I haven't touched. I got one of these days I'll actually start taking Social Security. So I'm not hurting and it gives me a comfort level to be able to try this right now.
Absolutely.
I'm not worried about if the money's actually going to be flowing in. And I realize, and it sounds kind of a jerk thing to say, so many other people with so much uncertainty right now, especially after the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But that's why I'm going into it. And I think it's, and people have different tolerances for risk, right? I mean, I was never really this kind of guy. I mean, especially when, my kids are grown now. I got 2 30 pluses and, my wife's about to retire coming up in June. She's a school teacher.
Yeah.
So she's going to, we're at a place in our life where, if I had chances to make risky, which may have gone crazy and been great, but I had a family and I'm not a risk. I don't gamble. I go to National Harbor to drink and eat, man. I don't go down there to throw money. And, or Maryland Live. When I go up there, I'm like, walk through there and go get me a whiskey at the bar. I don't spend time on the floor.
Yeah.
But now, because I've got so much, kind of a bedrock built, that I can go out and be a little more and it's really, I mean, they're taking such good care of me. My friends are saying, dude, you got this. And other people who have their own consulting firms, so and again, these relationships, right? They're Bill, here's what you do. Bill, here's what you do. Hey, Bill, one of my friends said, she says, I made these mistakes. I started a year ago. I'm going to tell you all the stuff I messed up so you're ready to go. And so again, just, don't be a jerk.
Yeah.
It'll come back at you.
I am so happy to hear this for you, especially with the retirement and where you're at. And, I know you're already going to be successful. You are already successful, but in the space that you're going into, and I love to see great people win. I just do. I just really love to see, how, over the time you put your work in, you've done what you knew was the right thing to do. And now you get to enjoy a little bit fruits of your labor, and to
Mhm.
explore something new, something different, that you're going to work and you're not going to be the CEO of. So I'm just saying, you know what I mean? We do have
I
some comments
appreciate you.
here. You're
Mhm.
welcome. So I think this is pointing back to when we were talking about folks that were in the room. We were talking about President Obama and what he had
Mhm.
said. And so Chevy said exactly, some people are at the table are not competent at time and need us. Um, it's true, people will downplay their gifts, their talents, their expertise, because they feel like they don't belong in the room, or they're too young or too whatever, right? So I think it is important for us to continue to have that as part of our thought process. And then Glenroy, hey Glenroy, how you doing tonight? He's another veteran
Hey,
coming up, and we worked together when we were in Vegas. So whatever we can learn as fast as we can learn it and apply it is important. Yes,
mhm.
absolutely. And he
Handsome
has another.
family. I see that shot. I see that that picture there.
Oh yeah, the boys.
Runway.
Yeah, he has two young boys, and I'm telling you, it's like, how you can see people that are already great leaders, and then their children become great leaders. It's just
Mhm.
so amazing to see him at this point in his life. And then he says we have to progressively plan to ensure that our futures are anchored to what we want them to be.
Right. It's so
Absolutely.
true. I
Yeah.
mean, we're little kids, and my mom was always telling us, like, we're getting out of here, right? We lived in the inner city, and it became rougher and rougher. This was the 60s into the early 70s. Not great. And, all around America, Cleveland, there's, the country, the big cities went through a time there, right? And we're like, yeah, we're going to go. And so we continually tried to, and we finally did get that farmhouse, but there were so many disappointments. So we go look at one now. Think about this. Here's another thing I'll say. I'm going to just throw this out there because I'm in a Rochelle show, right? I got this going on for me, but think about all my little contemporaries that live with me there. So my mom was this widow with 7 children, 6. My sister lived, but we got to go onto this farmhouse. These folks run into us. We went to that community, which was, I think there was one black girl in my high school with me, right? It was a 500-person high school. It ain't like a big
Believe
high school.
me, I can relate. I was the
Right.
only black girl in my class when I was in high school. So yeah.
So there's opportunities. Even though I was very modest, we lived in the projects. My mama worked. My dad, when he was with us, worked, and but nobody made a bunch of money. But it was all about what. But we did. We carried ourselves. We dressed as nicely as we could. Wasn't always new, but we dressed well. We carried ourselves well. Proper English. I'm telling you, man, this is, I can say this because I'm your cousin, right? This is the
Right.
thing. So many people, downplay that as a white thing, but look, English is English, man. You
It
can't
is.
go, you can't go write computer code and then write the code the way you want it, because your stuff ain't gonna come out right. You have to write, and I can talk street, of course, 1960s slang, right, which is a whole different thing, right? But then when I came in the house, my mom's like, "Oh no,
Oh no.
not in here." Right? And that is that, so that has helped me, the ability to present, the ability to communicate, which is never gonna, well, we're online, it's a little different now,
Yeah.
but that has been huge.
Yeah.
And I've had friends, look, I've been all through my Navy, I was on the ship, but when you pull into port for several months to get the ship work done, you can go get an apartment. So I'd get this apartment in Norfolk neighborhoods. Ended up being a pretty, I was a black neighborhood in Norfolk, right?
Yeah.
And I guess I was going back to my people or whatever. But I had my great friends, I'd actually hear my friends say to their children, there's one little dude, they called him Fat Daddy. He's probably 40 now and probably running a company.
Yeah.
But she would give him crap about speaking proper. I'm like, leave that boy alone. He's not going to ever be at the head of a table at some, big Fortune 500 company if he can't speak that language, right? And that's the one thing I'll say. Just go, do the very best you can, but don't let anybody tell you, no matter where they think you're just trying to. you're not down enough if you speak that way, right? You know what? You got to do what you got to do to get through the world. And I really, that troubles me so much because of what I've seen in my journey. And again, with all my privileges, um, but but that's not going to help you, right? You have
No.
got to present in this world the way that you know, the way you want to be seen. And this goes back to the comment that our guest just made. You got to see in the future what you want. We knew we were going to get all these we didn't doubt it. One of these days we're leaving these projects, right? And we did. And then one of these days we're gonna, I can remember when I first got here in town after the Navy. I was riding through like Temple Hills, Maryland, something. And, I'm like, man, here I am, DC Beltway, man. And this was like the early '80s, right? And it's just you realize it, and I really believe I love it, Glenroy, and I know those boys are gonna rock. But
Yeah. He's got another comment for us too, Bill.
mhm,
He says speaking proper English is paramount to garner respect and interest when your packaging is
yeah,
unfamiliar or the company you are is different. This is the reason he orders old fashions and Manhattans at the bar. They don't expect it from a black guy with locks, you
right,
know?
yeah,
So I really appreciate what you just shared because it's true. The way that we present ourselves it goes further. It's really interesting how my journey in the military went, right? But I was the black girl, the only black girl in my graduating class. I knew how to speak proper English very well. I knew how to write well. And
right,
that was the other thing, that the communication skills that really allowed me to go into the different positions, but also to create the relationships with individuals because I was practicing and I knew that it carried a lot of weight. So, even in today's time, like you said, the acronyms, abbreviations, the way that people speak to one another, and then they want to go into some companies and their
right,
brand does not speak that.
yeah.
It doesn't
Well, these
represent that,
folks
right?
can, right? But this is the thing, right? So everybody says, well, so rappers don't need to, basketball players often don't need to. But if you look at some of the real, LeBron and the other big guys and Shaq, they're up there. They're literally, look at Shaq is like brilliant, right? They're all smart. Nobody's not smart. That's the thing. It's how you present yourself. And but the world will bend to those guys, the rappers and those dudes, because they got the money. They got the money from another way. So they're gonna say, you say what you want, man. You be how you want, and we're gonna let you. But
Agree with that.
everybody, the rest of us, we have to work, and we have to hit. Not everybody's going to be a basketball star, and everybody's going to be a rapper, right? You have to sort of, to some extent, do what the world expects you to do, right? And I didn't make these rules. I just observed them and saw the success for them, and it pains me when I see my friends who don't have that success because they felt like, that, well, man, they're just, against me or whatever. But no,
Mhm.
it's not really what it is, because everybody's just out for themselves. I mean, can I share a book title that was very helpful?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
There's a book title called a book called Awareness. It's tiny. Anthony D. Mello's the guy who wrote it. He's gone now. This 20 years ago, but it helped me understand it. One of the key concepts is we're all dummies, right? We all are out for ourselves, and many of us try to help others. But at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, it's not like I'm against you. It's like I'm for me. So I'm doing it because it's what I want for me and my family and stuff. I'm not trying to hold you down. I'm just trying to. Here's what I need to do, and that had to shift. That shifted my mindset. Was like, look, if someone else does something that disappoints you or it's not the way you want them to do, and there's a lot of Karens out there, right, or whatever they call the male version of those, right? But those folks don't get this either. Because I don't care what, I'm not trying to mess with somebody else. I want to do my thing and what I need to get done. And I think that's what we professionally helps us too. Look, here's what I need to get done. And there's going to be a lot. There'll be something. I know I don't have to share this with you. You have a very successful listenership.
Yeah.
I know you've got some hate. I just know folks because
Oh
I
yeah.
know that's
Oh,
you're
absolutely.
going to get it.
Comes
So
with the territory.
yeah, but you can't let that, I don't let that hold you back.
Oh
I mean, I
no.
think, I just do your thing, treat folks right, treat folks with respect. And I know, and if anybody does, all the folks that work for me over the years, I try to keep it family. It's truly not family, right? Because you can't fire your family, right? So that I hate that's overused, but you try to treat folks right. It didn't always work out. Not everybody, agreed with my assessment of their performance at times and things like that. But and I didn't agree with my boss's assessment of my performance at times. But it's all about trying to do the best you can for yourself, your family, which is the only reason you really go to work. I mean, you go to work, you guys are good, but I'm trying to feed these folks, these little munchkins over here. That's what I'm trying to do, right? And send folks to
Absolutely.
college and stuff. And so at the end of the day, I had a big impact at DHS. I'm sure the day I walked out, an awesome guy came in acting for me, and then he got the job, and I'm sure they are rocking and rolling. And that's the way it's always going to be, right? So
Yeah.
do good for
Absolutely.
yourself, for your family, for your friends, and as many people as you can help. And again, we offer the website and the LinkedIn, and I will pass your stuff on. I'm more going to be a traffic cop than a mentor, though. I mean, a lot of folks I've seen have said, "Well, I'll read your resumes and I'll do this," and I'm like, "Oh my God, that would be an awesome service." But I'm trying to set up two companies and get a new gig, and
Yeah.
try to bring. And that's something I'm not quite offering yet. Although I really love copy editing, but
Yeah.
what do you do? But I can point you to a great tool that'll get you there. So.
Yeah, I think that, again, what you're sharing and what you're speaking to, it goes a long way. I was pulling up the book. I do have the link, but I don't know how that's going to translate. Y'all go to Amazon and look at this book, Awareness by Anthony DeMello, and check it out because I'm sure, and it's in my Amazon cart. I just put it in my
Oh,
cart as you were talking. I
awesome.
was like,
It's a
I'm going
quick
to go
read.
buy that.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can do it on a weekend.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
And then, so Glenroy has another comment. Everything he does is intentional. Everything someone sees you do can start a conversation. He knows wine, he knows
Mhm.
rum, cigars, coffee, all are catalysts that have placed him in conversations with people that wouldn't think they have anything in common with me.
Right, right.
You know, it's so
That's
smart.
something I do think, right? And Glenroy's coming up with some gems here, right? But
Yeah.
in my experience, it truly is. I mean, there are no like flat out just die in the world KKK racists anymore in our industry. I would say now, there folks can be hidden, but really, classism, if you will, is a thing, though, right? So
Mm,
I know that there's a certain level of people that I want to be involved with, right? They have a certain level of elegance, intelligence, you know, like class, however you want to put it, right? Glenroy's speaking to a lot of this stuff as well right now. And those are folks I want to spend my time with, right? I don't care, they're black,
absolutely.
white, and there's so many. In this town, believe me, this town is, there's nowhere, maybe Atlanta, but other than this town, anywhere else on earth that has this many erudite African American folks and other folks, right, of similar, they're non-white. Let me throw it out there. And so, but then, so that these are my folks, right? I want to go, smoke a cigar and do an Oban 14 with my man Glenroy here. I don't want to go down hanging in the holler. Nothing wrong. And I could,
You
and
could.
I would fit in actually based on
Yeah,
my past experience. But what are we going to talk about, right? But I
exactly.
would, we have things to talk about here. And
Yeah.
so I think what I found is people want other, and I literally see this every week. Do a lot of networking, a lot of late night networking around town here, and folks, everybody's welcome, but you have to bring a certain gravitas. You have to bring a certain, oh, je ne sais quoi. I'm going to start throwing some
Je ne
French
sais
around here.
quoi.
So if you bring something that shows that you get what it takes to play at this level. And
Yes.
I'm really starting to sound like, too hoity-toity here, but
No,
that's
I
what
mean,
folks are looking for. They're not like anti. or say anti-black, for instance. They're anti a certain type of person that they see that doesn't they don't think is putting in the and meeting their full potential. And I think that that's what folks are more looking at these days. And of course, there's very many influence, and it doesn't always have to do with money. Now, there's a whole bunch of folks that they got so much money, they're like, who's this clown? I live in
Right.
a very modest little home down here in Walworth, Maryland. Right? I've been here since '93 in this house.
But you're
But
absolutely right. Like this whole conversation is just like the the way that you put it into the classism, it's the high level conversations, right? It's what we're talking to and what we are looking to do. And it separates people from, you know, being in one particular area and trying to get to the next. And this town, this, or I would say the DMV,
mhm,
like you said, is kind of comparable to Atlanta. It almost makes you, you know what I mean? Like it's a forcing mechanism. Like there is a certain way. So I'll just share with y'all, me and Bill saw each other at Martha Stewart's event. I don't know exactly which veteran organization hosted it, but we were there, and you could listen when you walked in that space, you could tell. Okay,
mhm,
you talk at Jenna Sequa. I mean, like you knew that this was an important event for you to show up in a certain way and to have something to talk about, other
mhm,
than maybe whatever you would be talking about on the corner somewhere, right? And so I feel like that is something that is learned. All right. Sometimes you have to go through the pains of going to an event and being put into the center of, oh my gosh, like I didn't get to where I needed to be in this particular for this particular event, but I will next time. Like I know
mhm,
better, right? But I think that's what we're looking for. And nowadays, that's how I am. I'm like, and I'm in my second chapter. I don't need a whole lot of other stuff that I was in my first and second chapters. I'm just saying, it's just different. And then Glenroy even says, even down to teaching my boys, I think it's the boys, the importance of owning a tuxedo.
mhm,
This was something that I learned from an older, affluent guy.
mhm,
So, it's these little things, these details of the way that we present ourselves. And my dad wore a suit every day of his whole
mhm.
entire life. Like he was in uniform, but then he would put on a suit. I'm like, dude, we're going to Walmart. Why do you have this suit on? He's like, they treat you better in a suit. I'm like,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So, you know,
Well, when I was in the Navy, it's funny. I was so there's a couple things on this. I totally agree. Number one, but you got to own. You don't want to be an empty suit either. How many of
yeah,
us seen these guys dressed to the nines, and then they open their mouth and you're like,
ain't got
okay,
nothing.
I get it. Okay. And now you're just presenting, right? You're projecting, but what you can't really back up, at least think. But then, but to your point, when I was in the Navy, and I don't know, I'm 20. No, I wasn't. I wasn't. I was in my late teens, and I said, I said, you know what? I saw one of my buddies, how he got treated when he was wearing a suit. I think he was going to court for something, and I'm like. And of course, how he was treated by the ladies, right? That's what I was really. I'm like, I'm going
Yeah,
to get me some of this, and
yeah,
I went out and bought a baby blue 3-piece. And let me tell you what, that thing paid for itself. Just in you know how I felt about myself. But
yeah,
I took a plane ride. Of course, these people didn't know I was some little punk 18-year-old. But I was getting, I mean, at the time, it was, I get invited home to Christmas. Of course, I was like, I'm like 18. I'm going to see my mama. And so, and my brothers and sisters. But how you present, it's huge, right? It's
yeah,
because people don't know. They don't know you. They see what they see, and folks are so visual to start. So that's a start. Visual is a start, and it tells a lot about you. But then you have to, you got to back it up with your presentation skills, of course.
absolutely, absolutely. Now, yeah, we've been here for over the hour, and I knew we
No,
were because we were getting into the conversation. So we're so grateful that you stayed with us. And I do have one more question for you, Bill, before we say goodbye to our friends. Um, so usually, we're in the like the legacy building right now, right? This last chapter, if you will, or the next to the last chapter is when we're really starting to root and think about our legacy. Like, what is that going to look like? So, if God gives you, a few more years until you get to, well, you got more than a few more years. You've got at least 20 more years until you get to your 80th birthday. What do you want your family and friends to say about you?
hmm, that's a good one. Maybe that I was just sort of, there to, to help them set them on their way to take over the world, in their own way. I know that I don't have any grandkids yet, so I got a couple 30-year-olds that are going slow, but maybe
They'll get there.
that may not happen. But the one thing I do really like this, and it's as if more on my wife than me, I think, is the kids they treat folks right. I say the
Mhm.
kids, but they're one's 34, one's 31. So they treat folks right. They have a huge impact on other people. They are helping other folks, and they're helping other folks through their journeys, right? And did I help folks through their journey? I mean, I did. That's really all you can really ask for. I'd like to, there's so many other things I want to do. Um, Probably won't get them done. I ran out of time at DHS from doing the things I wanted to do, but now I'm going to try to do some from the outside. I think with the last couple of weeks, we didn't spend a lot of time talking about this, but it's probably good because we needed a little palate cleanser after a very stressful week for a couple of other folks. But my I wanted to fix DHS and then take it on the road to other agencies, and I think the overall life cycle of IT engineering and acquisition is not done yet because there's so many legacy systems out there. Again, I'm twisting your question back towards the professional, but I think that is professionally that's what I would love to do is just get to where we're doing the very best we can for the taxpayer end to end on these IT acquisitions and services provided there. And just from the other side, just did I at the end of did I treat you right? Did I do feel, and people are so kind to remind me of little things that I did for them once that I totally forgot about because I truly, I'm always going to high five the waiter. I'm always going to, the guys, because I was there, right? I was cleaning
Mhm.
those toilets. I was bussing those tables. I was that guy, right? And proud to do it then. It didn't mean, and I always knew where I was going. And the new folks coming, right? New folks coming to the country and I welcome them all. I mean, my grand folks were from Poland and Syria, and I never knew my mother's mother because she passed when my mother was quite young. Come to find out, they've been here since the 1600s, and I was thinking I was like second or third generation my whole life,
Wow.
and that wasn't the case. But not fully the case, mostly the case, right?
Yeah.
But those folks are coming over taking jobs that are service industry jobs. They all deserve respect and love as well. And and I shouldn't say love. I mean, respect and camaraderie. Because one of these days they're going to go. It's how this country was built. It's how it's going to continue to be built. I suspect we'll get over this little fever we got going on right now eventually, because think time's going to move on, man. The demographics are going to change. So it's going to be very interesting. May you live in interesting times. I think we're going to see some more of those.
Yeah.
But yeah, did I do you right? And if so, let's go have a beer and remember it and cheers to both of us. That's I guess what I want to be remembered for.
Well, I think that you will be and more. And so I appreciate your time. I appreciate the gems that you dropped in here and even sharing a resource. Y'all, we have the awareness book that Anthony DeMello. So if you want to go and purchase that, but all of this is in the vein to hopefully inspire inform, a little bit of education to anyone that's in our network. So I do want to say thank you to our guests. We had Chevy, Donnell, and Glenroy stop through on the live today. So thank you so much for your time and providing some comments for us to kind of tease out, because I think that
Yeah.
makes it more engaging. You know what I mean?
It
So
took us in a whole new direction that
it sure did.
not
And
afraid
I
to
love
do it,
it.
but I may not have gone there, but but
I love it.
we'll
I
see.
absolutely love it.
We'll see if the
Um,
hate mail starts rolling in. We'll
yeah.
see what.
Hey, bring it on. All right. I think we're both, we've got tough enough skin nowadays that, it is what it is. Um, But we will be back here on next Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, y'all. I got another SLAYMAZING guest that will be here with us. And also, you can find me on Tuesday mornings. I'm here as well, just to spread a little bit of education about personal branding and what that can do for you in your business career or even in your second chapter. So you can join me on Tuesday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So thank you so much, Bill, for being here with
Thank you,
me
Rochelle.
live tonight. I really appreciate you. I hope to see you in person here really soon on one of these networking, events that there is happening all across the DMV. So for everybody else, keep on slaying until you can't slay no more. And I will see you all very, very soon.
Good night.
Goodbye. Good night.